Welcome to this deep dive.
Okay.
And today we're tackling some pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah.
Global warming projections. Straight from the Climate Action Tracker, or CAT.
hmm
They're the group. They keep an eye on what governments are doing about climate policies
Right.
and how those policies, are impacting global temperatures, right?
Exactly.
They've got a new report out, November 2024.
Wow.
Warming Projections Global Update lays it all out.
Okay.
And we're gonna figure out where we stand on climate change.
Sounds good.
Are we making any progress, and what does the future hold for those rising global temperatures?
Yeah, it's a big question.
Yeah.
The report really does a good job of, I think, highlighting the disconnect
Yeah.
between the escalating climate disasters
Right.
that we're seeing, wildfires, floods, intense storms,
Right.
and the lack of meaningful progress on actually curbing the warming.
It's kind of like we're just, going through the motions.
Yeah.
But the needle isn't moving.
Yet the headline, finding that the world is still on track for a disastrous 2.7 degrees Celsius warming by 2100
Wow.
if we stick to current policies.
If we stick to the current path.
And what's really alarming, I think, is that this projection hasn't changed in 3 years.
Really? 3 years, and it's just
It's the same story.
same
We're on this treadmill going nowhere fast, and the planet is heating up.
around us, yeah. It's pretty clear we need a major course correction, but before we dive into solutions,
Yeah.
let's break down the different scenarios laid out in the report. They're talking about policies and action, targets, even an optimistic scenario.
Oh,
It's kind of like a choose-your-own-adventure,
I like that.
but with the fate of the planet at stake.
Yeah, high stake.
High stakes, yeah. So the first scenario, policies and action.
Right.
What is that?
Reflects the real-world situation,
Okay.
what governments are doing.
Uh-huh.
And as we said, that leads to a very worrying 2.7 degrees Celsius warming by 2100.
Okay, so that's the stay the course trajectory.
Yeah, stay the course, and we know where that leads.
That's not good.
No.
What about the other scenarios? Do they offer any hope?
Well, the 2030 targets only
Okay.
assumes countries meet their stated climate goals for 2030,
Okay.
but nothing beyond that.
Uh-huh.
It results in a slightly better outcome, 2.6 degrees of warming.
Okay.
Still pretty dire, but
It's something.
a sliver of improvement.
Yeah, it's a little bit better.
Yeah,
So meeting those 2030 targets is crucial,
absolutely.
but it's not enough in the long run.
Right.
What about those long-term commitments,
Yeah.
like those net zero pledges we hear so much about?
That brings us to the pledges and targets scenario.
Okay.
This one factors in both the 2030 targets and those longer-term pledges,
Mm-hmm.
including those aiming for net zero emissions.
Okay.
This scenario gets us down to 2.1 degrees,
Oh, wow.
still exceeding the Paris Agreement goals,
Right.
but a significant improvement over the previous scenarios.
So we're seeing that those long-term goals do make a difference
They do, yeah.
in the projections.
On paper, at least.
But as we know, not all pledges are created equal, right?
Absolutely, and that's where those
Yeah.
net zero loopholes come in.
Ooh, loopholes.
The report highlights concerns about
Yeah.
the transparency and effectiveness of some of these long-term pledges.
I see.
Some countries are relying heavily on offsetting emissions,
Okay.
meaning they're essentially paying others to reduce emissions
Mm-hmm.
instead of making significant cuts themselves.
So they're not really doing the work.
It's like promising to lose weight by buying a smaller scale.
Oh, I like that.
Doesn't really address the problem.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
So achieving those net zero goals in a meaningful way requires genuine emissions reductions,
Right.
not just creative accounting.
Okay, so no cooking the books here.
No.
We need the real deal. So the report gives some concrete examples of this.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Australia, for instance,
Yeah.
planning to rely heavily on offsetting to achieve its net zero target,
Okay.
which raises doubts about their commitment to genuine emissions cuts.
Okay, so that lack of transparency can make it really hard to track real progress
Yeah,
and to hold these governments accountable. like it.
exactly.
Okay.
They even highlight a court ruling in South Korea
Oh, wow.
where the country's vague net zero targets were deemed unfair to future generations,
Really? Wow.
emphasizing the need for clear and concrete plans,
Right.
not just distant promises.
Yeah, we need to see the receipts, basically.
Exactly.
Let's move on to that optimistic scenario. Is that where we all start driving solar-powered cars and
Yeah.
planting trees like crazy? What is that?
It's essentially, yeah, full implementation of all pledges and targets, including those net zero goals.
Okay.
So in theory, this is the most favorable picture,
Okay.
with warming limited to 1.9 degrees Celsius by 2100.
1.9, so much better than the other scenarios, right?
It sounds better, right?
Yeah.
But the optimistic label is a bit tricky.
Okay.
Even in this best-case scenario, only a 50-50 chance of achieving that 1.9-degree warming limit.
Really?
And remember, exceeding 1.5 degrees, even temporarily,
Right.
carries significant risks.
You're talking about those irreversible climate tipping points.
Exactly.
Like the domino effect. Once it starts, it doesn't stop.
It's hard to predict what happens after that.
So even the most optimistic scenario isn't a guarantee of safety.
It's a reminder of how delicate the balance is.
Mm-hmm.
And given that 2025 is considered the critical year for emissions to peak,
Yeah.
we don't have much time to waste.
We're really cutting it close.
It makes it clear that 2025 is a make-or-break moment.
Okay.
If emissions don't peak next year, the chances of achieving the 1.5-degree target become incredibly slim.
So this is urgent.
It's a very tight deadline.
We're staring down this rapidly closing window of opportunity.
It feels that way, yeah.
What we do today is going to have, consequences for generations to come.
Absolutely. And that brings us to the crucial question. What are the trends driving these projections?
Yeah.
And where do we see those glimmers of hope amidst these daunting challenges?
Okay, let's unpack those trends. We talked about the bad news, those persistent emissions,
Yeah.
the slow pace of change.
Right.
But are there any bright spots? Any signs that we're moving in the right direction?
Well, there are some encouraging developments,
Okay.
particularly in the realm of renewable energy.
Okay.
The report highlights a boom in renewables.
Okay.
Investments in clean energy actually doubling those for fossil fuels for the first time.
Wow. That's
That's a significant shift,
huge.
indicating a growing momentum behind the transition to a cleaner energy future.
So renewable energy is gaining some real traction.
It seems to be, yeah.
Does that mean we're finally turning the corner, though?
I'd like to say yes, but
Okay.
not so fast.
Okay.
While the rise of renewables is encouraging,
Yeah.
the report also reveals a countervailing trend,
Oh.
a surge in fossil fuel subsidies.
Really?
These subsidies reached record highs recently.
So we're propping up the very thing.
It's propping up the fossil fuel industry,
Wow.
hindering the transition to cleaner alternatives.
So it's like we're taking 2 steps forward with renewables
Yeah,
and then a giant leap back with fossil fuel subsidies.
unfortunately.
It's pretty frustrating.
It is. It highlights that funding for new fossil fuel projects quadrupled between 2021 and 2022,
Wow. Quadrupled.
largely driven by government support.
That just contradicts everything we're trying to do.
It undermines the progress being made with renewables.
Okay, so we're caught in this tug of war
Yeah.
between, the momentum of renewable energy and the just persistence of these fossil fuel interests.
The power of the fossil fuel lobby is still very strong.
How does this tension play out in the emissions projections?
Well, despite the rapid growth of renewables,
Right.
global emissions are still projected to rise for the rest of this decade
Okay.
before beginning a gradual decline.
Oh, so they're still going up.
They're still going up.
Yeah.
But the pace of that decline is far too slow
Okay.
to align with the goals of the Paris Agreement.
Okay, so we're seeing those emissions need to peak
Soon.
noon.
And then we need a much steeper decline
Right.
to get back on track.
Okay, let's dig deeper into those Paris Agreement targets.
Yeah.
What does the report say about our chances of hitting that ambitious 1.5-degree target?
To put it bluntly, the report paints a sobering picture.
Okay.
Meeting the 1.5-degree goal requires a massive,
Yeah.
coordinated global effort
Right.
to slash emissions,
Like, how much are we talking?
cutting them in half by 2030
Wow.
compared to 2019 levels.
Okay.
And the stark reality is we're nowhere near that trajectory right now.
Let me grab my calculator.
Wow, that's a huge gap we need to bridge.
It is. Under current policies, global emissions are on track to be double what's needed
Whoa.
to meet the 1.5-degree target.
And even if all countries fully implemented their pledges, those 2030 targets and long-term net zero commitments,
Mm-hmm.
we'd still be 70 to 85% above the necessary emissions reductions.
Those numbers are they're staggering.
They're huge.
And they really highlight the scale of this challenge.
It's a big challenge.
The urgency of taking action.
Yeah. I think the most striking revelation is the critical importance of 2025.
Okay.
If global emissions don't peak next year,
Yeah.
achieving the 1.5-degree target becomes incredibly unlikely.
We're at a crossroads.
Very much so.
The choices we make in the next 12 months will have
Huge implications.
huge implications, yeah. This is definitely a wake-up call.
It is.
For governments, for businesses,
Absolutely.
for individuals.
We all have a role to play.
Okay, so the report
Yeah.
focuses on the global picture,
Mm-hmm.
but it also provides valuable insights
It does.
into the actions and commitments of individual countries.
Yeah, it breaks it down. Examining these case studies can help us understand who's leading the charge, who's lagging behind, and what lessons we can learn
I like that.
from their successes and failures.
That's a perfect segue to the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
Let's shift our focus to those individual country snapshots.
Yeah.
See what we can learn from their diverse approaches to climate action.
Sound good.
All right, let's do it.
So these country snapshots offer a fascinating look at the diverse approaches, or lack thereof,
Right.
that nations are taking to address climate change.
Yeah.
It's a mixed bag, really, with some countries demonstrating genuine commitment,
Mm-hmm.
while others seem entrenched in a fossil fuel-dependent mindset.
So who's stepping up? Who's lagging behind?
Well, Chile, for example, has emerged as a leader in renewable energy expansion.
Oh, Chile.
They've been rapidly scaling up solar and wind power.
Okay.
And they're actually ahead of schedule on their plan to phase out coal-fired power plants.
That's pretty impressive.
It is.
It shows that, transitioning away from fossil fuels isn't just a pipe dream. It's
Yeah.
a real possibility.
It's happening.
Are there other countries that are kind of standouts as positive examples?
The European Union, despite some internal disagreements
Okay.
and ongoing reliance on fossil fuels, deserves recognition for its ambitious climate targets.
Okay.
They've proposed a 2040 emissions reduction target
Okay.
of at least 90%,
Wow, 90%.
which is a significant commitment.
That's huge.
They're also planning to substantially increase their industrial carbon removal capacity.
Okay, so they're really investing
Yeah, putting their money where their mouth is.
in some innovative solutions.
Hopefully it'll pay off.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Any other countries worth highlighting for their climate leadership?
Kenya stands out as a positive example, particularly among developing nations.
Oh, Kenya.
They're on track to meet their 2030 emissions reduction target
Okay.
and continue to prioritize renewable energy expansion.
So it shows that it's not just, wealthy nations. that use this.
It's a global imperative.
Yeah,
Requires contributions from all corners of the world.
I like that. That's inspiring.
It is.
Seeing these examples of progress,
Yeah, gives us hope.
proving that, ambitious climate action is achievable.
It can be done.
But I have a feeling you've also got some less than stellar examples in your notes.
Unfortunately, yes.
Which countries are falling short of expectations?
Well, several major emitters
Okay.
aren't demonstrating the level of commitment needed
Mm-hmm.
to avert the worst impacts of climate change.
Okay.
Australia, for instance, remains heavily reliant on fossil fuels,
Yeah.
particularly coal.
Australia. Yeah, we kind of talked about them earlier.
Yeah, despite some efforts to boost renewables,
Okay.
their overall emissions have remained stagnant.
So it seems like, their reliance on those offsets isn't really translating into those genuine
Not really, no.
emissions reduction.
It's a gap between rhetoric and action.
Yeah. They're talking the talk,
Yeah,
but not walking the walk.
not so much.
What about any other countries singled out for their lack of progress?
Saudi Arabia comes under scrutiny
Okay.
for its lack of substantial policies
Uh-huh.
to curb emissions.
Okay.
As a nation heavily dependent on oil and gas production,
Right.
they've been slow to embrace renewable energy,
Makes sense. Yeah.
and their investments in clean technologies lag far behind what's needed
Okay.
to align with global climate goals.
So not a surprise given their economic dependence
Right,
on
right.
fossil fuels.
Right.
But it does raise concerns about,
Their commitment.
Their commitment.
to a sustainable future.
what about other, major players like Canada, the U.S.?
Yeah.
How do their actions measure up?
Canada presents a bit of a mixed picture.
Okay.
They've made some progress in reducing domestic emissions,
Okay.
but their exported emissions from oil and gas production remain a significant concern.
Okay, I see.
So when you factor in the eventual combustion of those exported fuels,
Okay.
their overall contribution to global emissions is substantial.
So shifting responsibility for those emissions by exporting them doesn't really
Not really.
absolve them of their role in the problem.
It's a loophole.
What about the U.S.? They've had a, kind of turbulent history
Yes, they have.
with climate policy.
Uh-huh.
Where do they stand now?
Well, The report acknowledges some positive developments in the U.S.
Okay.
under the current administration, particularly the implementation of the Inflation Reduction Act,
Okay.
which has spurred significant investments in clean energy technologies.
Okay, so that's a good thing.
It's a positive step, but they're still not on track to meet their climate targets.
Oh, okay.
And the recent political shifts create uncertainty
Right.
about the future direction of their climate policies.
So they're on a path of progress, but it's a path
It's a bumpy road.
marked by uncertainty and potential setbacks.
Good.
So let's turn our attention to China, the world's largest emitter.
Mhm.
Are they taking a leadership role in addressing climate change?
China's approach is multifaceted and complex.
Okay.
They've made substantial investments in renewable energy,
Okay.
surpassing their 2030 target for solar capacity 6 years ahead of schedule.
Wow. Okay.
This rapid expansion of clean energy infrastructure is commendable,
That's great.
but it's offset by their continued reliance on coal,
Oh.
which resulted in record high emissions in 2023.
So it's kind of a 2 steps forward, 1 step back situation,
It is a balancing act,
highlighting those challenges of,
trying to balance economic growth with environmental sustainability.
Okay. What are the key takeaways?
I think the key takeaway is that there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Okay.
Each country faces its unique set of challenges and opportunities.
All right.
What unites these diverse examples is the need for urgent and ambitious action.
Yeah, we can't wait any longer.
A rapid and equitable transition away from fossil fuels.
Okay.
A global commitment to invest in clean technologies.
And a collective effort to hold governments accountable for their
Wow.
pledges and actions.
It's clear that, a global problem requires a global solution.
Absolutely.
But what about us as individuals?
Yeah.
What can we do in our own lives to kind of contribute to this collective effort?
It's a good question. And while the report primarily focuses on the actions of governments and nations,
Right.
it's important to remember that individual actions do matter.
Okay.
They contribute to a collective shift
Uh-huh.
in mindset and behavior,
Right.
and they send a powerful signal to policymakers and businesses.
So you're saying, our choices as consumers, as citizens, as members of our communities
All of that contributes.
can really have a ripple effect,
A ripple effect.
influencing the larger systems that shape our world.
Absolutely. Every decision we make, from
Yeah.
the products we buy to the way we travel
Mhm.
to the food we eat, has an impact on the environment.
So it's about being mindful of our impact,
Yeah.
making choices that align with our values. Exactly.
But it's not just about those individual actions.
Right.
It's also about engaging in those larger conversations,
Absolutely.
holding our elected officials accountable,
Yes.
using our voices to advocate for systemic change.
We need to shift the narrative from individual responsibility to collective action,
I like that.
demanding that our leaders implement policies
Mhm.
that prioritize a rapid and equitable transition
Right.
to a clean energy future.
It's about recognizing that we're all in this together.
We are.
Our collective actions have the power to shape the future.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
From those sobering warming projections
Yeah.
to the inspiring examples of progress
Mhm.
and the urgent need for collective action.
We've seen it all.
What are your main takeaways from this conversation?
I think what strikes me is that tension
Yeah.
between urgency and agency.
Okay.
The situation demands immediate action,
Right.
but it also highlights our collective power.
To shape a different future.
So we're not just passive observers.
We're
We're
not.
active participants
Very much so.
in shaping the future of our planet.
And the choices we make in the next few years
Yeah.
will have consequences that resonate for generations to come.
Let's shift our focus to the bigger picture.
Okay.
What are the broader implications
Yeah.
of these warming projections, and what steps can we take
Mm-hmm.
to kind of navigate those challenges
Hmm.
and seize the opportunities that lie ahead?
Sounds like a plan.
So we've explored the projections, the trends, those country snapshots.
Yeah.
But, as we wrap up this deep dive,
Mhm.
I think it's crucial to address the elephant in the room.
Okay.
What does a future with this level of warming actually look like?
Yeah. It's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
The report does a really good job of
Mhm.
laying out the potential pathways,
Yeah.
highlighting the urgency of action.
Right.
But it kind of stops short of delving into the specifics of what a 2.7 degree or even a 1.9 degree warmer world
Right.
would mean for
Yeah.
us, for ecosystems, for future generations.
It's almost like they're giving us this map and saying,
Yeah.
here's where we're headed. good luck figuring out the terrain.
Exactly. And I think that's where the real work begins.
Okay.
Not just understanding the data, but grappling with its
Yes.
implications.
What will it mean for food security, for water resources,
Right.
for coastal communities?
Yeah.
How will different regions of the world be impacted?
Exactly.
And what kind of adaptations will be necessary?
All valid questions.
This is where it gets really thought-provoking,
Yeah.
for our listeners.
It's not just about the numbers on a graph.
Yeah.
It's about envisioning a future
Yeah.
that will be shaped by these climate changes.
And that future isn't predetermined.
Absolutely not. The report makes it clear that the choices we make today
Yeah.
at the individual level, collective level, and policy level will determine the trajectory we end up on.
So this report is really a call to action,
It is.
not just a prediction of doom.
It's a reminder that we have agency,
Yeah.
that we can still influence the course of events.
Absolutely. And speaking of action, the upcoming COP29 climate conference,
Yeah, big one.
the report kind of describes it as a last chance to get on track.
Last Chance Saloon.
Yeah, it takes on an even greater significance now.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's an opportunity for world leaders to translate those pledges and targets
Right.
into concrete action,
Yeah, we need to see action, not just words.
to ramp up those 2030 emissions reduction goals,
Yeah, ambition is key.
and to commit to a rapid
Yeah,
and equitable transition
Equitable is important.
away from fossil fuels.
Absolutely.
The stakes are incredibly high,
They are.
but so are the possibilities.
Absolutely. If we seize this moment,
Yeah.
if we act with the urgency
Mm-hmm.
and ambition that the situation demands,
Yeah.
we can still create a future that is more sustainable, more just, more resilient.
It's an inspiring vision,
It is.
and one that I think really resonates with our audience.
I hope so.
The deep dive listeners, they're curious, they're engaged,
They want to make a difference.
they want to make a difference. So as we wrap up here, what are some key takeaways?
Okay, well, first and foremost, stay informed,
Okay.
dig deeper into these issues,
Mm-hmm.
explore the resources we provided in the show notes.
Yeah, we've got a ton of great links.
Continue to educate yourself about the complexities of climate change.
You okay?
Knowledge is power. The
Mhm.
more you understand,
Yeah.
the better equipped you'll be to navigate.
Yeah, to take action.
Absolutely.
It's also about, engaging in those crucial conversations.
Yes, talk to your friends,
Yeah.
your family, your colleagues,
Share what you've learned.
raise awareness,
Yeah.
encourage others to join the movement
Yeah.
for climate action.
Collective action starts with those individual conversations.
It does.
And don't underestimate the power of your own choices.
Yeah.
Every decision you make,
Every single one.
from the way you travel to the food you consume
Absolutely.
to the products you buy,
Sends a signal
sends a signal.
to the market and to policymakers.
By making those conscious choices
Right.
that align with your values.
You can contribute to a more sustainable future.
It's about recognizing that we're all part of a larger system.
We are.
That our individual actions, combined with the collective efforts of millions of others,
Mhm.
can create that ripple effect
That's how we create change.
that transforms the system.
Absolutely.
And finally, never lose hope.
Never.
The challenges we face are daunting,
They are,
but they're not insurmountable.
Human ingenuity, innovation,
Yeah.
collaboration. We've overcome seemingly impossible obstacles before.
Right.
We can do so again.
Yeah, we've done it before.
The future is not yet written.
Right.
We have the power to shape it.
With our actions today.
Ab-
That's a powerful message to end on.
Yeah.
A message of hope, of agency, and of the collective power we hold
Mm-hmm.
to create a better future.
A better future for all.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive
It's been a pleasure.
into the latest global warming projections.
Yeah.
Remember, knowledge is only valuable when it's applied.
Absolutely.
So let's take what we've learned and turn it into action.
Let's do it.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep pushing for a more sustainable world.
See you next time.